Admiral Tae Kim stood perfectly still on the bridge of his flagship. The metal floor beneath his boots hummed with power as thousands of enemy ships approached like angry wasps. His officers watched him carefully, waiting for orders that would come in whispers rather than shouts. The main screen showed the massive alien fleet growing larger by the second. 3,000 hegemony warships, their hulls painted in war colors, their weapons charging with deadly light. Against them stood only 1,000 human vessels, but Tae showed no fear on his calm face. "Sir," called out Lieutenant Jiho from his position at the tactical station. "They're broadcasting on all channels." Tae nodded once. The alien voice that filled the bridge was like thunder, full of rage and threat. Warlord Vextar's words echoed through the metal corridors. "Pathetic humans. Your tiny fleet will burn in the fires of our weapons. We are the mighty hegemony. You will bow before our power or be destroyed." Other human commanders might have responded with anger. They might have shouted back their own threats, or tried to sound brave with loud words. But Tae simply adjusted the collar of his uniform and spoke in a voice so quiet that everyone had to lean forward to hear him. "Ari," he said to his communications officer, a young woman with steady hands, "open channel to all ships. Tell them formation Delta 7. No need for them to respond." Ari Park pressed the buttons on her console with practiced ease. Across the human fleet, ship captains received their orders in the same calm tone their admiral used. No screaming, no panic, just clear, simple instructions, delivered like a teacher explaining math to students. The alien fleet continued to approach, their ships moving in rough groups with no real pattern. They relied on their size and strength, expecting their enemies to be frightened by their loud threats. But the human ships began to move in a different way entirely, like birds flying in perfect formation. The human vessels started to shift positions. Ship by ship, they created a pattern in space that looked almost like a flower opening its petals. The movement was so smooth and quiet that it seemed like a dance rather than a battle preparation. "Enemy fleet will reach weapons range in 5 minutes, reported Jin from the weapons station. His voice was steady, copying the calm tone of his admiral. Tae walked slowly across the bridge to look at the tactical display. The glowing dots that represented the enemy ships were spread out in a loose formation, racing forward without much thought. It was exactly what he had expected. Aliens who fought with emotion rather than planning always made the same mistakes. Heian Tae said to his second-in-command, "What do you see when you look at their approach?" Commander Heian Choi studied the screen for a moment. "They're coming straight at us, sir. No subtlety. They want to overwhelm us with raw force. And what does that tell us about their commanders?" Hyun smiled slightly, beginning to understand his admiral's thinking. "They're angry. When people are angry, they don't think clearly." "Exactly." Tae's voice remained as calm as morning coffee. "Angry commanders make angry decisions, and angry decisions win battles for their enemies." The alien fleet was now close, enough that individual ships could be seen on the visual screens. Massive warships covered in weapon ports and armor plating. They looked like floating fortresses, each one capable of destroying a city. But Tae looked at them the way a chess master might study an opponent's pieces before making the winning move. "All ships," Tae said quietly into his communication device, "begin Phase 2. What happened next was like watching a magic trick performed by 1,000 spaceships. The human fleet, which had been moving in their flower-like pattern, suddenly shifted again. Some ships moved up, others moved down. Some went left, while others went right. But it wasn't random movement. Every ship knew exactly where to go, because their admiral had planned every step. The aliens, seeing this movement, assumed the humans were trying to run away. Their war cries became even louder as they rushed forward to catch what they thought were fleeing enemies. They packed their ships closer together, trying to cut off any escape routes. "Phase 3, Tae whispered. The human ships that had seemed to be running away suddenly turned around. But they didn't turn to face the enemy head-on, like the aliens expected. Instead, they came at the alien fleet from above and below, from the left and right, from angles the enemy hadn't protected. It was like watching wolves hunt. The aliens had charged forward like an angry bull, but the humans moved like hunters who had planned every step of the trap. The alien ships found themselves surrounded, caught in a web they hadn't seen being built around them. Laser fire began to light up the darkness of space. But instead of the chaotic battle the aliens wanted, it became a careful, planned destruction. Human ships fired with precision, hitting exactly the right spots on enemy vessels to disable them quickly. Meanwhile, the alien ships, packed together in their rush to attack, could barely move without hitting each other. On his bridge, Admiral Kim watched the battle unfold exactly as he had planned. His voice never rose above a whisper, but every word carried the weight of absolute command. In space, entire fleets moved to the rhythm of his quiet orders, proving that the softest voice could carry the greatest power. 5 years before the Great Battle, Dr. Kim sat in a quiet university office, surrounded by thick books and glowing computer screens. He was not a soldier then, just a scientist who studied how different alien races thought and acted. His job was to understand why aliens made the choices they made, especially when they were in charge of other aliens. On his desk lay reports from dozens of alien civilizations. Each report told the same strange story. Alien leaders always shouted. They always made loud noises. They always tried to scare everyone around them. Tay found this very interesting because humans did not work this way at all. Minjin, he called to his young research assistant who sat at a nearby desk. Minjin Lee was a smart student who helped Tay with his studies. Come look at this recording from the Vexillian command structure. Minjin walked over and put on the headphones. Through the speakers came the sound of alien voices screaming orders at each other. The Vexillian commander's voice was so loud it hurt to listen to. He threatened to kill anyone who did not obey him fast enough. They think volume equals power, Tay said softly. The louder they are, the more their followers believe they are strong leaders. This was very different from human leaders. The best human commanders Tay had studied were usually calm and quiet. They gave clear orders without yelling. They made people want to follow them because they seemed wise, not because they seemed scary. Tay spent months studying recordings from alien battlefields. Every single time, the alien commanders who lost their temper also lost their battles. When they got angry, they made bad choices. When they made bad choices, their enemies won. This is their weakness, Tay told Minjin one day while looking at battle reports. If we can stay calm while they get angry, we can make them defeat themselves. Now, years later, on the bridge of his warship, Admiral Tay Kim used everything he had learned in that quiet university office. He watched Lieutenant Minjin Lee, his former student, who was now his weapons officer, pull up the tactical display on the main screen. The alien ships were doing exactly what Tay had predicted they would do. Their commanders were getting more and more frustrated because the human fleet would not fight the way they expected. Aliens expected their enemies to scream back at them. They expected threats and anger and loud challenges, but the humans gave them only silence and calm planning. Listen to their communications, Tay said to his bridge crew. The speakers filled with the sound of alien voices getting higher and more panicked. Commanders were screaming at each other. Some were blaming others for the problems. Some were giving orders that made no sense. Commander Hyun Choi, who stood beside Tay, finally understood what his admiral was really doing. Sir, you are not just trying to beat them in battle. You are trying to break their minds. Tay nodded, slowly. When beings who use fear to control others find that fear does not work, they become afraid themselves. Fear makes people do stupid things. He turned to his communications officer, a young woman named Yoon, who had learned to speak in the same quiet way as her admiral. Yoon, I want you to broadcast our tactical discussions on the open channels. Let the aliens hear how we talk to each other. Yoon pressed the buttons that would send their voices to every ship in the area, including the enemy ships. Now when Tae gave orders, the aliens could hear everything. Minjin adjust targeting solution for Grid 7 Alpha, Tae said in his normal quiet voice. Understood, sir. Targeting adjusted, Minjin replied calmly. Heian, what is the status of our shield generators? All shields operating at full power, Admiral. No damage reported. Very good. Yoon, signal the third battle group to move to position 12. Message sent, sir. Third group acknowledging and moving to position. On the alien ships, commanders and crew members listened to these calm conversations with growing confusion and fear. They had never heard enemies talk this way during battle. Where was the anger? Where were the threats? Where was the fear that should come from facing the mighty hegemony fleet? The alien communications channels became more chaotic as their commanders tried to understand what was happening. Some aliens thought the humans must be crazy to sound so relaxed during battle. Others worried that the humans had some secret weapon that made them confident. The more they worried, the more mistakes they made. Admiral, reported the scan officer, the enemy fleet is starting to break formation. Their ships are moving without coordination. Tae smiled just a little bit. Their commanders are arguing with each other instead of focusing on the battle. This is exactly what I hoped would happen. Through the speakers, the alien voices grew even louder and more panicked. Some commanders were screaming orders. Others were screaming that the orders were wrong. Some were demanding to know why their weapons were not working better. Others were blaming their crews for being weak and stupid. Meanwhile, the human crews continued to work with quiet efficiency. Each person knew their job and did it well. Nobody yelled, nobody panicked. They all trusted their admiral to guide them through the battle, and that trust made them stronger than any alien war cry ever could. The biggest alien fleet anyone had ever seen filled the darkness of space like a cloud of angry metal wasps. Over 2,000 warships moved together, each one bristling with weapons that could destroy entire cities. At the front of this massive force flew the personal ship of Supreme Warlord Krax, the most feared military leader in the galaxy. Krax's voice thundered through space, so loud that it made the walls of human ships vibrate. Coward Kim, stop hiding behind your whispered words. Face me like a true warrior. Show me the honor of real combat. On the bridge of his flagship, Admiral Tae Kim stood as still as a statue. His hands were folded behind his back as he watched the enemy fleet approach on the main screen. The glowing dots that showed alien ships covered the display like stars. But Tae's face showed no fear. He looked like a man studying an interesting puzzle, rather than facing the largest military force in galactic history. Tae, he said quietly. To his navigator, begin withdrawal pattern, Echo 4. Navigator Dae-yoon looked up from his control station with surprise in his eyes. Sir, if we start moving away from them, they will think we are running scared. Tae turned his head slightly to look at the young officer. His voice remained as calm as morning rain. That is exactly what I want them to think. Tae hesitated for just a moment, then began entering commands into his computer. Across the human fleet, ships started to turn away from the approaching enemy. To anyone watching, it looked like the humans had seen the size of Krax's force and decided to run away before the fighting started. The alien warlords' laughter boomed through space. Yes, the cowards flee. Chase them down. Show them what happens when weaklings face the mighty hegemony. The massive alien fleet surged forward like water rushing through a broken dam. Every ship pushed its engines to maximum power, desperate to catch the retreating humans before they could escape. The alien commanders shouted orders to go faster, to spread out and surround the enemy, to show no mercy. But what looked like a panicked retreat was actually something much more clever. Tae had spent months studying the star charts of this system. He knew about the two giant suns that spun around each other in an endless dance. He knew how their gravity pulled on everything that came near them. Most importantly, he knew how to use that gravity as a weapon. Jin, Tay said to his tactical officer, his voice so quiet that Jin had to lean closer to hear. Mark position 77 Alpha on your display. Jin Shin pressed buttons on his control panel, adding a small glowing marker to the tactical screen. To most people, it would look like just another point in empty space, but Tay saw it as the key to everything. The human ships continued to move away from the aliens, but they were not moving in a straight line. Instead, they curved through space in a path that seemed random, but was actually planned down to the smallest detail. They were leading the alien fleet toward the twin suns, but doing it so carefully that Krax and his commanders never noticed the trap being set. All ships, Tay whispered into his communication device, prepare for Phase 2 of Ec. The human captains had practiced this maneuver many times in training, but never with real enemy ships chasing them. Each captain knew exactly where to go and when to go there. They trusted their admiral completely, even though what he was asking them to do seemed impossible. As the two fleets moved deeper into the star system, the gravity from the twin suns began to affect both groups of ships. But the humans had planned for this. Their course took them through the gravitational fields, in a way that helped them move faster, like a ball rolling downhill. The aliens, rushing forward without thinking, found themselves being pulled off course. Enemy fleet is entering the gravity well, reported the scan officer. They're trying to adjust course, but their momentum is too great. Tay nodded once. Everything was happening exactly as he had calculated. The alien ships were moving so fast, and were packed so close together, that they could not change direction quickly enough. The gravity of the twin suns grabbed them, and began pulling them into paths they had not chosen. Now, Tay said simply, the human fleet, which had been running away for the past hour, suddenly split apart like flower petals opening. Some ships dove down below the plane of battle. Others climbed up above it. Still others curved around to the left and right, but they all did it at exactly the right moment, when the gravitational forces would help them instead of hurt them. The aliens found themselves caught in a trap made of mathematics and starlight. Their own speed worked against them as they crashed into each other, unable to stop or turn in the crushing grip of the twin suns' gravity. Ships that had been hunting humans suddenly found themselves spinning out of control, or colliding with their own allies, from hidden positions behind planets. And in the shadows of asteroids, human ships appeared like ghosts. They struck with perfect timing, hitting alien vessels that were helpless to fight back. Each attack was planned to disable rather than destroy, showing that the humans were stronger not because they were more violent, but because they were smarter. Through it all, Admiral Tay Kim never raised his voice above a whisper. Warlord Krax had lost more than half his fleet, and his mind was breaking like glass under too much pressure. His voice echoed through the alien command channels, but now it carried the sound of madness instead of strength. Where once he had been a feared leader, now he was a creature of pure rage and confusion. Attack the left flank, he screamed at his remaining captains. Then, only minutes later, his voice boomed again. "No, ignore that order. Attack from the right. Why are you not moving?" The alien officers looked at each other with growing fear. Some had followed his first command and were already moving their ships to the left. Others waited for the second order and started moving right. The result was chaos as alien ships crashed into each other or moved in completely wrong directions. When some captains tried to ask which order they should follow, Krax flew into an even greater rage. "You dare question me?" His voice cracked with fury. "Execute Captain Vexmal for disobedience." The sound of weapons firing could be heard over the communication channels as another officer died for trying to do his job. On the bridge of his flagship, Admiral Tay Kim watched this destruction. With calm eyes, he could see how the alien fleet was tearing itself apart from the inside. Fear was spreading through their ranks like a disease, making them weak and stupid. "Hannah," he said quietly to his communications officer, "open all our channels so everyone can hear us talk." Communications Officer Hannah Jung pressed the buttons that would broadcast all human conversations to every ship in the area, including the remaining alien vessels. Now, when the humans coordinated their attacks, the aliens would hear exactly how real military professionals worked together. Commander Quan Te said in his normal quiet voice, "What is the status of our shield systems?" Commander Quan Bei checked his displays and responded with the same calm tone. "All shield generators operating at 97% efficiency, Admiral. Minor damage to Sector 4 has been repaired. Very good. Lieutenant Su, do you have targeting solutions for the enemy command ship?" Lieutenant Su Moon looked at her tactical screen and answered with professional precision, "Yes, sir, I have 3 different firing solutions ready. Recommend option 2 for maximum effectiveness with minimum damage to their crew." "Understood. Hold fire until I give the command." The aliens, listening to these conversations, felt something they had never experienced before. They heard human officers talking to each other with respect instead of fear. They heard plans being made with careful thought instead of angry shouting. They heard a leader who cared about the lives of his enemies enough to choose weapons that would not kill unnecessarily. On many alien ships, crew members began to whisper among themselves. Some had served under commanders like Krax their entire lives, always living in fear of being executed for small mistakes. They had thought this was the only way military forces could work, but now they heard something different, something better. "Why does their admiral not scream at his officers?" asked one alien soldier. "Because he does not need to," replied another. "They follow him because they want to, not because they are afraid." This idea spread through the alien fleet like fire through dry grass. On ship after ship, crews began to realize that they were fighting for leaders who cared nothing about their lives. They were being used as tools by beings who would kill them for any small failure. The first alien ship to surrender sent a simple message: "We wish to serve under Admiral Kim's command." Then another ship surrendered. Then another. Entire squadrons began to turn away from Krax's fleet and ask the humans for protection. Their commanders sent desperate messages, begging to be allowed to join the human forces because they finally understood what real leadership looked like. Krax watched his own forces abandon him and fell into a rage that shook his entire ship. "Traitors, cowards, I will kill you all." But his threats only made more ships desert him. Nobody wanted to serve a leader who had lost control of his own mind. Finally, with only a few dozen ships still following him, Krax made one last desperate choice. His voice, now hoarse from screaming, filled the communication channels one more time. "Admiral Kim, I challenge you to single combat. Your ship against mine. Let us end this like true warriors." On his bridge, Tay considered the challenge for a moment. Around him, his officers waited quietly for his decision. They knew their admiral well enough to trust whatever choice he made. Tay walked to his communication station and spoke in a voice that was barely louder than a whisper, yet somehow carried more authority than all of Krax's screaming had ever possessed. "Challenge accepted, Warlord. This ends now." The words were simple and quiet, but they held the weight of absolute certainty. Every person who heard them, human and alien alike, knew that the battle was already over. The only question was whether Krax would realize it before it was too late. In the distance, Krax's massive warship turned to face the human flagship, its weapons charging for one final confrontation between madness and calm wisdom. The final battle between the two flagships was like watching a teacher correct a student's mistakes. Krax's enormous warship, 3 times the size of any human vessel, fired its weapons in wild patterns across space. Massive energy beams and explosive missiles shot out in all directions, most missing their target completely. The alien warlord screamed orders at his crew, demanding they fire faster and harder. But his anger made them clumsy and afraid. Tay's ship moved through the chaos like a dancer, performing a careful routine. Every turn, every speed change, every defensive move was planned with perfect timing. When his weapons fired, they hit exactly where Tay wanted them to hit. Instead of trying to destroy Krax's ship, the human weapons targeted specific systems. The engines, the weapon controls, the communication arrays. Target their main power coupling, Tay whispered to his weapons officer. Disable, do not destroy. The precise shot hit its mark perfectly. Krax's ship shuddered as its main power system failed, leaving it floating helplessly in space. The alien crew was alive and unhurt, but their ship could no longer fight or run away. Krax's voice, now filled with confusion instead of rage, came over the communication channel. Why, ... Why did you not kill me? I would have destroyed your ship without mercy. Tay stood quietly on his bridge for a moment, looking at the disabled alien vessel on his main screen. Then he did something that shocked every person listening, human and alien alike. He opened a communication channel that would reach every surviving ship in the entire battle area. To all hegemony forces, Tay said in his calm, quiet voice, I offer you alliance instead of conquest. True strength does not come from who can shout the loudest or destroy the most. It comes from thinking clearly when others lose control. The silence that followed his words was complete. Thousands of alien crew members listened in amazement. They had expected the humans to demand surrender or threaten punishment. Instead, they heard an offer of friendship from the beings who had just defeated the most powerful fleet in galactic history. You have shown us something we did not know existed, came a voice from one of the alien ships. We wish to learn from you. What happened next changed the galaxy forever. Instead of creating an empire built on fear, Tay began building something new, a partnership based on mutual respect and learning. The aliens who had once been enemies became students, eager to understand how the humans fought so effectively while staying so calm. Commander Myung-Jang, one of Tay's most trusted officers, established the first mixed training program. Human and alien officers worked together, learning from each other's strengths. The aliens taught humans about their natural intuition and quick reflexes. The humans taught aliens about careful planning and emotional control. Officer Seo Kang developed new fighting methods that combined the best of both approaches. These new tactics were more effective than anything either species had used before, proving that cooperation created better results than competition. Years passed, and the changes spread throughout the galaxy. Former enemy fleets became joint exploration forces. Worlds that had once attacked each other now shared technology and knowledge. The loud, angry voices of warlords were replaced by the quiet, thoughtful discussions of leaders who actually cared about the people they commanded. 5 years after the Great Battle, Admiral Tay Kim stood on the bridge of a new kind of ship. It was designed by both human and alien engineers, working together, combining the best ideas from many different species. Around him worked officers whose skin was different colors and whose faces had different shapes, but who all spoke in the same calm, professional tones. Ye Tay said to one of his officers, an alien who had once served under Krax himself, look at Formation 12 on the tactical display. What do you think could be improved? The alien officer, whose name was a series of clicking sounds that humans called Yi for simplicity, studied the screen carefully. Once, he had been trained to scream orders and threaten his subordinates. Now, he spoke in the measured, thoughtful way he had learned from watching Tay. The energy distribution is not efficient, Admiral, Yi replied. I recommend we use the delta adjustment pattern we practiced last month. Excellent observation, Tay said with a small smile. Make it so. As Yi gave the orders to the fleet, Tay reflected on how much had changed. His greatest victory had not been destroying an enemy fleet or conquering alien worlds. His greatest achievement was proving that quiet wisdom was stronger than loud anger, that careful thought was more powerful than violent emotion. The training exercise continued around them, with ships from a dozen different species, working together in perfect harmony. When it was finished, Tay spoke into his communication device one last time. "Well done, all ships, all stations, secure." His words were barely louder than a whisper, but they reached every vessel in the formation with perfect clarity. In a universe that had once been filled with the screams of warlords, the quiet voice of wisdom had finally found its place. The galaxy was learning that the person who speaks softly while thinking clearly will always carry the biggest stick of all.